Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoy this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience.
A university in a large regional center was considered young, so it did not have the same prestige as, say, a pedagogical one. There is its own professorship, library, published scientific works, and at the university, the first graduating class of students were prepared to become future university professors. From that graduating class, two of them had the most significant careers. Archie became rector, and Harry became a professor. He lectured and was adored by the students. Archie and Harry had once been friends, but their paths had long since diverged. Archie was married and raising children. He looked older than his years and was constantly overloaded with things to do. His many responsibilities at the university and at home left him no free time. To look at Archie, you'd never say he held a prominent position. A short man of slim build. He wore suits for 20 years, and his wife could hardly persuade him to wear anything she bought or knitted for. But Archie was in love with science, with his university. When he spoke of its development or transformation, his eyes began to burn with a fanatical glow, and it was clear that the man was in his place. Perhaps it hurt Harry that he was not the rector, for he had been considered the most brilliant student in the course. His thesis was later published in a book. He could have loved to talk, was artistic and very good-looking in a movie. In short, if it was necessary to represent the university somewhere, including abroad, he would be perfect. Not so much for that white-haired Archie, who talks so fast that you can't always understand him, especially if he's passionate about a topic. Now it's hard to believe that until their fourth year, they've been thick as thieves, going on archaeological expeditions every summer, and if anything, standing up for each other. At the time, neither of them was thinking about high office. Archie, however, and now completely indifferent to the titles and regalia. And when he was offered to move to the ministry, refused flatly. The university was his life, and to a large extent his brainchild. Harry had once wanted to become an archaeologist, to spend his life traveling on expeditions. Even at the bottom of the sea, he was ready to search for submerged antiquities. But his parents intervened. It was their initiative to defend a PhD, then a doctorate. Their connections played a big role in the fact that his path to science was smooth, without a hitch and a hitch. And Harry had been lecturing ever since. At first, he was stuffy within the university walls. He dreamed of the old days, of the camp of archaeologists, of the excavation, of songs by the fire. But he was the only son of his parents, and his father and mother had an overbearing character, and at one time he was not able to break free. Then his father died, his mother became ill, and he realized that he couldn't go far away. He lived separately. He had a beautiful apartment not far from the university, but he visited his mother several times a week as she was feeling well, and if she was ill he moved to her for a while. Therefore, when acquaintances started talking to him about marriage, Harry, laughing, said that he had an old girl on his hands, so a young wife he would not pull. And his wife would not want to share him with his mother, who had such a difficult character. So passed the time when he in the eyes of society was considered a promising bachelor. For him, however, that time had passed. After all, even now, when he was well into his 40s, or rather under 50, he retained his imposing appearance, artistry, and sonorous, expressive voice. In recent years, among the students did not sparkle a single bright star. Every year there was an inevitable dropout. The last example was when two students took their documents and got a job in a streetcar depot, where there was a good income. Girls got married one after another, took a leave of absence, went on maternity leave. And those who studied crawled from exam to exam, from course to course, with apparent difficulty. Everyone knew Stone was unmarried, and many hoped to unscrew him. There had even been arguments about who would succeed. Later, the bar was lowered. It became clear that none of the girls, even the most beautiful, Stone will not take to the wedding. But to visit him at home to get credit was quite realistic, and there were girls who could tell about these visits. But for some reason they all kept silent and did not discuss what was going on at the professor's house. Only once did Natalie say something. What a bastard he is. But Natalie did not want to discuss what it meant. The professor lived his life to his heart's content. A couple of times a year, he would find a companion like a nurse for his mother and go on vacation. In winter to a ski resort, and in summer to some European country to see the antiquities dear to his heart. When his mother's friends asked her if Harry had finally married, if he had at least children, the old woman only waved away. She seemed to be completely content with this state of affairs, and as long as she was alive, she was not going to share her son with anyone. Catherine and Kathy became friends quite by accident. Kathy came from a small town and went to university because she was a good student. Here, in the regional center, she had an aunt, and Kathy moved in with her. The house was on the very outskirts of the city, and it took an hour on a packed bus to get to the university. To be honest, her aunt didn't care about her niece. She was fighting with her husband, and the divorce was imminent. At home, on the closet stood a row of empty bottles of liquor, and the collection was regularly replenished. Her aunt had no children of her own, no experience with them, and she was looking for a girlfriend in Katie. In the evenings, when the girl was studying, the aunt would come to her with another bottle of sweet liquor and 2 glasses. Katie knew that now her aunt would complain to her about her life, about her foolish husband, and she would have to give in and sympathize. It was risky to object, because at any moment the aunt could say, "Go to the dormitory," and Katie didn't want to go, because the dormitory was so bad. It was 2 9-story red brick buildings with a communicating passage that only looked presentable on the outside. Inside, the atmosphere was that of a university that didn't have a penny to spare. Stripped walls, elevators that almost never worked, broken windows in the halls. Glasses were put in, but every now and then they were back out. The kitchen had 1 stove for the whole floor, so students kept illegal stoves in their rooms. The hot water was constantly cut off. In short, among the students, only a few lived in the dorm from the first year to the last. Everyone tried to find a couple among the natives of the big city and move in with a friend or a girlfriend in normal conditions. Katie tried to study at night, but then she came to class tired and could doze off in the lecture hall. Once she even snored and became a subject of ridicule of her classmates and harassment of the teacher. He was morally offended, he said, because his lectures made some people drowsy. As a result, Katie had to drop all other subjects and study only ethnography to crawl through the session. Her situation was difficult. A scholarship, even a small one, meant a lot to her. Katie was being raised by a single mother, and she could give her very little money. Almost the entire amount of money Katie gave to her aunt for food, leaving herself only for transportation, and to go to the movies, to buy herself new tights, common notebooks for lectures. All this should have been enough for a scholarship. To save money, Katie tried to walk more, and once she got lost and wandered into an unfamiliar courtyard. She didn't know much about the big city yet, just exploring it. She was attracted by the old houses, and she did not notice how she found herself on this quiet street, which literally breathed the 19th century. Realizing she was lost, Katie looked around for someone to ask for directions. In the courtyard, a girl about her age was sitting on a bench. Katie asked her a question. "Where you want to go?" the girl asked. Actually, Katie had to go home to her aunt's house, so she needed the number 1 bus stop. The girl furrowed her brow, thinking, "You have to get off at the highway, but it's a long walk. You better go to the opera house, where the streetcar stops. You can get there with a transfer." The girl was very beautiful. Her dark hair curled around her face. Kathy also noticed that there was a stick leaning against the bench, the kind used by elderly people who had trouble getting around. Kathy had walked a lot in the city that day, and now she realized she was tired. She sat down next to the stranger, and the girls got to talking. To Katie's surprise, it turned out that they were studying at the same university. "Only I'm at the biology department," Catherine explained, "on a part-time basis. I couldn't get to class every day. But when it's in session, my father drives me." "And you live here?" Catarina nodded at one of the beautiful old houses. "This is our apartment." "Lucky you," said Kathy, but it was noticeable that her envy is light, as they say, white. "Try it in our dorm. The elevator's been working for maybe 3 days this year, and I live on the 9th floor. "Yeah," Catherine laughed. "I wouldn't have made it up there." "And we have mice and even rats," Katie said. "Recently, a mouse ran right into the middle of the room. In the daytime, you know, I thought I was glitching." "I didn't live here before," said Catherine, "far away, in the middle of nowhere. We had mice at first, too. The scariest thing is that they can eat the winter supplies. Cereal, lard. Then my mom brought a cat, and she destroyed them." "I'd like a cat, too," sighed Katie, "but they won't let me have one in the dorm. We're really strict about pets. Although I know the girls on the 7th floor have a canary. A kinnar, actually. His name is Billy, in honor of the class president. The girls chatted, and it wasn't until it was getting dark that Katie remembered she had to leave. "You don't come here much, do you?" There was a sense of regret in Catherine's voice. "When you're in the area, come and visit. Everyone says college is the golden age, but I have no friends, no one." Catherine rose to her feet, and Kathy noticed that her new acquaintance was moving with great difficulty, leaning heavily on a stick. She did not ask what happened. Maybe Catherine is uncomfortable to talk about it, but the girl explained herself. An old injury. Maybe if they had operated right away, it would be better now. But there was no opportunity. "My dad keeps threatening to send me abroad. They'll operate there, and I'll be able to fly like a butterfly." Katie sighed. Catherine was lucky to have a father, too. She had never even been to the seed herself. Since then, if she came to the city center and here to the regional library, she often needed to always look in a familiar courtyard and often caught Catherine there. The girls chatted about everything. Kathy admitted that studying is not easy for her. She had been an excellent student at school, but now she was taking so many new subjects at once. To prepare for a seminar, you have to sit in the reading room and work with sources. Then you fly to the bus stop to catch the last bus, and the worst of all is getting home in dark yards. Even the lights aren't always on. I walk with a flashlight. "And then where do you want to go?" Catherine asked. "I'd sooner finish the institute and come home. I have only my mother. I miss her very much. Other girls do not understand me. No one does not want to leave here. Big city, so many opportunities. They just want to get married, that's all." "And you have not fallen in love with anyone here?" asked Catherine with a smile. "Yes, as it is from our boys, seemingly no one pays attention to me," said Kathy. "We have one teacher, such, the star of the screen. Well, hope that he will love me. It is generally ridiculous." "What if he does?" Catherine's smile was sly. "No," Kathy shook her head, "but if you go abroad, you can easily have an affair with some rich foreigner. You are so beautiful." "I first need to heal," said Catherine soberly. I do not even think about it in the sense of all that. I want to wander through the forest, to Ortega Lakes." Her face became dreamy, but she did not continue the topic, and Katie did not learn anything new about her friend. And only during the session at the correspondence students, she was amazed to see that Catherine, leaning on a stick, gets out of such a familiar car. "Did Archie bring you?" After a moment, she asked. "Of course. I'm his daughter." Catherine looked at her with surprise. "Did you know?" "You never told me about it." "Well, I didn't have to. I hardly ever see my dad. He's always away at work. So consider, only live with my mom." Catherine tried to walk so that her limp was as little noticeable as possible, but it was not good at it. Nevertheless, the session she passed on excellent. And not because she was the native daughter of the rector. Catherine studied with passion and had a memory, which is simply called photographic. Pages of textbooks she memorized in the flight and retold them then almost verbatim. Most of all, she regretted that she would not be able to go with the other students for practical training. They were going to the reserve, and Catherine only had to listen to their enthusiastic stories when they returned. Things were not going well for Katie. She couldn't pass her exams and was in danger of not being allowed to take them. She approached Harry in a state of confusion. First of all, she really needed his signature on her transcript. Secondly, she seemed terribly afraid of the professor, but deep down she knew what that meant. Katie was in love with him. Katie was lucky. Harry was in the office alone, sorting through some papers. Usually he was always surrounded by students. Katie approached so timidly that if she had seen herself from the outside, she would have been reminded of a yard dog daring to enter the house. "What did you want?" Harry asked without looking up. "Can I retake it?" Katie whispered. The professor looked at the girl ironically and at the same time appraisingly. Katie would have been all right, medium height with a good figure, golden red curly hair falling below her shoulders, big green eyes. The only thing that spoiled her was the unclean skin on her face. Katie tried to scrape together money for beauticians and treatments, but it rarely worked and didn't help much. Harry sighed. "What took you so long to come?" "It's Friday. Your exams start next week. Until the credits are closed, you won't even be allowed to take your first one." "I know. Why did you do so poorly in my class?" Katie could say that she'd been working hard on her other exams and hoping to cheat off Harry. It was not uncommon for him to give students such a party, handing out assignments and leaving the room. But it didn't work this time. What do you suggest we do? Katie stood there, stifled. How hard would it be for him to sign off by saying something like, "I hope you'll live up to my trust next semester"? After all, the credit is not an exam. There, hesitating to put 3 or 4, the teacher knows that the student's scholarship for the next 6 months hangs in the balance. But here, one word pass, and that's it. "Prepare and come see me tomorrow," Harry said about 7 o'clock. "I'll write down the address." What Katie couldn't imagine, she just clapped her eyes shut. At break, she couldn't bear to share it with one of the students, and immediately learned a lot of racy details. It turned out that several girls from their class alone had already been to Harry's. They had gotten credits and good grades on their exams, and what went as an appendix, no one complained. "He's a true master of the Kama Sutra," the girlfriend enlightened, almost enviously. "You'll like it too." Now Katie was sure that getting ready meant putting on nice lingerie, well, that sort of thing. She was going to the professor like a bride to a wedding. Even her aunt noticed something. "Are you going on a date?" she asked. "Well, sort of," Katie answered vaguely, touching up her lipstick. "Look, I won't let you bring anyone here," Auntie warned, and then she wanted to know the details. "Who's the boy? Where from? Is he from the city or is he from out of town too? Are things getting serious?" "Don't make such a big deal out of it," Katie said, her cheeks burning. She spritzed herself once more with perfume and grabbed her purse. "I'm late." She couldn't afford a cab, and it took 2 transfers to get to the professor's house. So many thoughts crowded into her head as she hesitated to press the bell button. When Harry opened the door, she couldn't even say hello out of excitement. To her amazement, not only did he look far from romantic, he didn't resemble a man about to flirt with a girl at all. He rubbed his face with his hands. "Come into the living room. I'll be right there." The large room was cluttered, as if the owner hadn't gotten around to it in a long time. Stacks of books, papers, notes. There was dust on the windowsill, and the TV smelled like a cat. Katie turned up her nose. Yeah, she was right. Auntie's cat litter box smelled exactly like that. "The bastard saw the newspaper with the program on it and used it for its intended purpose," Harry said. He handed Katie a sheet of printed questions. "If you answered these 2, you'll get credit. Get ready. Call me later." Katie was left alone in the room, bewildered and confused. After a few minutes, she recovered enough to think about the assignment. She began scribbling down answers on paper. There was no one in the way of cheating. Finished? Katie waited for a while. The professor wasn't coming. She tried to call out to him, but it was soft and he probably didn't hear. So she got up and went wandering around the house, hoping to find him. He was asleep. In the small room, nestled on the couch with a book, he must have thought to doze off for a few minutes, but he fell sound asleep. The book fell on his chest, and Harry reminded Katie of an old boy. She felt sorry for him. Katie never thought she could feel sorry for a man who stood far above her, if you meant on the social ladder. One could wake him up, or wait for him to wake up on his own, or leave the note sheets by the couch and leave. And why get Monday? Katie didn't do either one or the other or the third. She went to the bathroom, found a bucket, a mop and a rag, and set about cleaning. She moved quite silently. Harry woke up when it was already dark. He had forgotten about Katie and her test. It was very rare for him to fall asleep in the middle of the day, and now he woke up with a clear, good head. He was glad of that. Now it was possible to stay up late into the night working. He was writing a book, but he often lacked the time or energy to finish a chapter. The light was on in the kitchen. Katie sipped her tea and read the textbook, and for the first time she was interested. Every word seemed significant, and Katie felt surprisingly peaceful now, as if she were truly at home, in this big professor's apartment, cleaned by her hands. She looked up. Harry was standing in the doorway. Probably should have gasped and looked embarrassed, and start making excuses like, "Sorry, I'm sorry, I was just messing around without you." Instead, Katie asked, "Do you want dinner?" Harry realized gradually, the kitchen no longer resembled a warehouse of dirty dishes. The smell of home cooking. It smelled like the neighbor who cooked much better than his mother and had fed Harry when he was little. "I made zucchini stew," Katie said. "Do you have a cottage?" He shifted his eyebrows, remembering. Some acquaintances brought them over. They're obsessed with their cottage. When he had eaten, she poured him some tea. "Give me the credit," he said, stealthily switching to you. How far is it to get home? Katie took the credit as a matter of course, nodded, and tucked the blue book into her bag. It's a long way, she said. I was going to clean the windows tomorrow. What time will you be home? Look, I didn't mean you're going to do the dirty work like this. It's already clean. Katie's not worried at all, just the windows. Where do you live? He asked. She named the most remote part of town. Not so long ago, it was considered a village in itself. Where are you going now? Stay. I'll give you bedding. You can lie on the sofa in the big room. What about that? What? Katie's got her chin up. I'll worry about whether you got home safely or not. I'm the reason you're late. Katie thought about calling her aunt to warn her, but her aunt and her house seemed far away now, like they were from another life. She texted, staying with friends. It's okay. Katie. It took Katie a long time to fall asleep. The couch is soft, but it's narrow, so you can't spread out. And every hour and every half hour the antique clock chimes, so Katie knows for sure it's 3 in the morning and she's still awake. She managed to doze off before dawn, but not for long at all. Still, she jumped up first, and by the time her host woke up, she was drinking her second cup of coffee. Saturday afternoon slipped by. Kathy washed windows, cooked lunch. Harry was still in his office working, and when there was a break, he and Kathy chatted. Or rather, Kathy talked and he listened. So he learned how she lived with her mother in her small town, and now with her aunt and uncle, and how he wished the college years would pass so he could go home. Are you really going to school? Harry wondered. Of course. Katie sprayed a special liquid on the glass and picked up a rag. I still have my favorite teacher there. She's retired now, and she's got, what's her workload? 40+ hours. That's more than 2 jobs. It's very hard. Nobody goes to school. I'm gonna come in and make Cindy feel a little better. And Kathy made a borscht that made me dizzy just smelling it. After they ate, the girl put the pots in the fridge. You'll have enough for 3 days. And then? What? He looked at her questioningly. I'll come and cook what? She wiped her wet hands and began to pack. Auntie was already getting worried there, probably. Left alone, Harry found himself thinking. The idea of a housekeeper had never occurred to him before. Yes, he had women over, and he'd often stayed over, but he never thought of a housekeeper. Usually strangers in the apartment annoyed him. Katie didn't. She was easy to talk to, even silent. She didn't need to be impressed. The girl lives poor. She'd probably be happy to have a part-time job. Why not? Her peers work part-time in cabs and pizzerias as waitresses, handing out flyers on the streets, and some even work at gas stations. Katie, on the other hand, has her homework in hand. She loved the opportunity. And the next time a girl came to see him, he said, in no uncertain terms, if you clean this place up a couple times a week, I can pay you this much. How's that? Katie paled, then blushed, then said quietly, okay. She showed up for work neatly, like clockwork, and soon there was no corner of the apartment that her caring hands had not touched. She was sorting out his closets, tidying up his closet. God, he didn't realize he had so many shirts, sweaters, and vests. It was all lurking in the depths of the closet, and he'd wear whatever was hanging closest. Now his refrigerator was never empty, and when he came home, he was happy to think of a delicious dinner waiting for him. A month later, his mother, who he visited, squinted at him and diagnosed him. You found yourself a woman, a good woman. A servant, he explained with a smile. Pay her well and don't hurt her, the mother said. You should dust her off. You look like a different person. Harry was already, in his mind, treating Katie better than well. He'd given her a key to the apartment, and he had a special card that held money for housekeeping. He let Kathy spend it however she wanted and never asked for an accounting. He gave Katie the ultimate trust. He was his own man in front of her. He could doze off, he could work, he could be quiet, or he could start sharing thoughts that came to mind. But he was completely unable to see Kathy as a woman, and he had nothing to say to her. Kathy, can't you make some appetizers tomorrow and buy some good wine? I've got a friend coming over. He didn't notice the girl's expression change, the way she bit her lip. Katie nodded silently and disappeared into the kitchen. The aunt didn't know her niece was moonlighting. She thought she had a busy college life, sitting in the library, going to the movies, staying with friends, or partying at dances. But the girl was too tired and silent to come home. Now she didn't wait for her aunt to call her for a drink, but often suggested it herself. "Shall we sit down?" And when her aunt poured her a second and then a third glass, she did not refuse. They say that love changes a person for the better. At least his eyes began to burn. And Katie's eyes became tense and anxious, as if she was waiting for something all the time, and she didn't see her friends at all. Even Catarina, whom she loved very much, had no time to visit. New Year's Eve was approaching. Katie knew her mother was waiting for her, counting the days until the winter session was over, but Katie invariably managed to get away for the holiday itself. She and her mom never went out. Like most people, they thought New Year's Eve was a family affair, and they never had a penny to spare. They set the table for two. My mother cooked her trademark bujanina, which smelled so fragrant that the whole entrance drooled. We met New Year's Eve according to local time in Washington and went to bed almost immediately when the concert began. We woke up late, finished the pickles from the refrigerator, just like everybody else. And we had to scrape together money to buy each other presents. Katie managed to save up for a gold ring for her mom last year. You'd think it would be easy to do without jewelry, but mom had been used to denying herself too much her whole life, and her daughter wanted to pamper her. And her mother bought Katie a set of cosmetics that looked at it, leafing through the catalog, but could not even think to spend such a sum. This year too, Katie intended to go home at least on the morning of December 31st. Harry probably wouldn't want to settle for her cooking for the holiday. Obviously, he had a restaurant and a new date planned for the holiday. Katie, for her own good, would rather not see it. But just before New Year's Eve, the professor fell ill. Usually the flu would hit their town in February and recede in March, along with the cold weather. But there was no doubt about it. Harry had gotten the flu. High fever, aching bones, sore eyes, the classic picture. "Katie, you better not come to see me," the professor said over the phone to his assistant. "And who is after you? And what about you alone?" The girl was confused. "I'll lie down. I wasn't going anywhere anyway." Perhaps he was lying, but Katie imagined the picture. A sick man with no one to help him. Literally no one to pour water or call an ambulance. All his girlfriends, of course, scattered. She bit her lip. That same day, she called home. "Mom, I can't make it. Don't worry about it. But it just happened. We have a second exam. There are consultations. We will prepare together with the girls. Well, I cannot be away. You go to Aunt Betty. She'll be glad." Their lonely elderly neighbor was also celebrating New Year's Eve alone with the TV. Both of them would have more fun with their mom. On the 31st, Katie unlocked the door with her key as if nothing had happened. Harry was lying on the couch, covered with a blanket. Next to him on the nightstand was a glass of cool tea. The professor looked most unhappy. At that, he was very surprised to see her. "Katie, I told you," he began. "Put everything in the hallway and leave. I'm very grateful to you, but I don't want you to get sick." "I won't get sick," Katie said firmly, though she didn't feel confident. "I'm vaccinated. I'll clean up and we'll have a party. I forgot to ask, do you have a Christmas tree? Even a small, artificial one?" "I haven't put one up for a long time. It's only when there are children in the family." Katie put her hand on the professor's forehead. "When was the last time you took your temperature?" "An hour ago. 38 and 6. So I'm gonna feed you a little bit now. Then we'll take antipyretics. Then you sleep, and I'll clean up the place." Harry felt so weak, he wanted to obey that confident young voice. He was happy to let Katie take charge. By evening, the apartment was sparkling clean, and there was a live Christmas tree in the great room. There were few toys, but the lights from the garland created a kind of magical atmosphere. Katie was in the kitchen, and Harry, feeling a little better, was sitting on a cushioned bed, watching a little comedy, eating a redfish sandwich and drinking cranberry morsels. He thought that not even his mother had taken such good care of him in her day. And he and Katie celebrated the holiday with honor. At exactly midnight, they raised their champagne glasses. Everything Katie had prepared seemed unusually delicious to the professor. The girl didn't let him sit for long. She saw to it that Harry drank the medicine, turned off the lights, and left only the lights on the Christmas tree. And the professor fell asleep so soundly that he was not disturbed even by fireworks and firecrackers under the window, laughter and shouts of tipsy companies that gathered in the yard. Harry woke up at dawn. It was quiet outside the window. Even the most stubborn had gone home for the day. He was as wet as a mouse. He didn't call for Katie, but she heard him stirring. She came and helped him into dry clothes, brought him a drink, and he went back to sleep, the sound sleep of a man on the mend. Katie had been so proud of herself for nothing, saying she'd never get sick. The flu had caught up with her, and now it was the professor's turn to take care of his assistant. He wouldn't let her go anywhere. Do you want to infect your mom or your aunt? Stay here. I'm immune to infection. I'm immune now. I'll call a doctor and we'll get you back on your feet in no time. They ended up spending New Year's Eve together. Harry helped Katie study for her exams. All moral barriers melted away during that time, and the girl had never felt so happy. And the professor swooned when he saw the girl's gift. It was a book he wanted to have, but the price made him wave away the purchase. Katie, did you get an inheritance? Having said that, he realized that the joke was not quite successful. The girl only had her mom, and losing her would be a tragedy for Katie. I mean, did you rob a bank? Just saved up. Katie jerked her shoulder, showing that the problem wasn't worth mentioning. From the money I gave you, right? You didn't spend any of it on yourself. I couldn't take money from you. Taking care of you for a fee. She snuggled into his shoulder and he hugged her gently. Katie didn't come home until the last few days of vacation. It was obvious that her mother missed her and was sad that she would soon have to be separated again. But as she looked at her daughter, she said, I have never seen you so happy. God willing. I guess Mom must have known something. Kathy told her aunt that she would be staying with a friend from the new semester. The old woman was pleased. You'll be better off with a friend. You can go to classes and dances together, and you'll have the same conversations. And it's too far for you to get from me to the university. Good for you for deciding that. The only person to whom Katie told the whole truth was Catarina. The girl herself could not give herself the reason why she decided to open up to her. Catarina was not only calm and serious, but she had an inner strength. Kathy had never heard her friend lose her temper or become indignant. Kathy attributed it to Catarina's mutilation. She'd been through too much. Like now, all Catarina said was, You didn't ask what his plans were. No, Kathy shook her head. How can I have any influence? Who am I around him? The corner of Catarina's mouth twitched slightly, but Kathy knew her friend too well to see it as mockery. I think he wants us to go somewhere together this summer, Kathy remembered. He said he never vacationed in the U.S., that I should get a passport to. Talk him out of uni. What? Katie thought she misheard. I know the story from my dad, but I gave my word not to discuss it with anyone. I'm sorry, but I can't even tell you. Come on, Catarina, please. Kathy pleaded. You realize that no one cares as much as I do. I promised. Catarina repeated. I can only tell you one thing. If you can get Harry to go somewhere by the sea where archaeologists are digging, he'll be much happier than he is now. Present it as your idea and convince him it's not too late. But Kathy let her friend's words pass her ears. Catarina obviously doesn't get it. Harry has everything here: apartment, job, status, students, an elderly mom who can hardly be moved. In short, the tree is embedded in the soil here with all its roots. How can you tear it out? And in February, when spring was beginning to feel in the air and the days were getting much longer, Kathy realized she was pregnant. Later, she didn't know why she had decided to hide it for a while. The fact that she was going to have a baby. She herself took it with joy. Everything was going to be all right now. Harry had said himself that his life had been different when Katie had come into it. To sign or not to sign wasn't important. But no one had ever given Igor a gift like she would. She decided to confess to him on his birthday. Pregnancy was very easy for her. There was no nausea or dizziness. She just wanted to sleep more often than usual, and the smell of peppermint was maddeningly annoying, that's all. Katie looked better too. Her face, which had previously had to be covered with so much foundation, was clean and smooth. She had put on a little weight, and her eyes were calm and confident. Thanks to Igor, she was now well dressed. And more than once on the street, Katie had caught interested looks from men. At the university, she didn't tell anyone about her affair. If the girls noticed that she was no longer rushing to the bus stop to go to her aunt's house in a distant neighborhood, Kathy said that she was now living in an apartment. Nevertheless, the affair was soon made known on the course, but Katie behaved in a way that she was not allowed to question, and gradually the fellow students backed off, but no one took Katie's affair with Harry as anything serious. Somehow it became known that Katie had been invited to the professor's house as a cleaner, and the girls concluded that the professor had successfully arranged a free servant plus intimate services. Very convenient, but of course, all this will not last long. Katie's too plain and unassuming for a man like Harry. If he ever marries, it won't be to someone like her. And her classmates, talking to Katie, pretended not to know. The anniversary was a long way off, but Harry couldn't make his birthday go unnoticed. It was customary to bring champagne and hors d'oeuvres to the university department, to treat colleagues, to accept congratulations. And the most expensive wine the professor kept in his office in case of important guests. The rector also visited him on this day, but it was not worth spending on Archie's collection of French wine. He did not know anything about drinks and preferred a shot of white wine occasionally on special occasions. In fact, the doctors had forbidden him to have a stomach ulcer and alcohol was to be avoided. At home, Harry said to Kathy, "I don't want you to bother. Let's go to the restaurant. Everyone will see us." Kathy expected Harry to say, "So what? Let them look and be jealous," but he reassured her with the wrong words. "It's a small restaurant, very quiet. We'll rent an office. I'm sure no one will notice." Katie wore a new dress, blue velvet. Probably her fellow students wouldn't have been tempted by it. They'd say it was old-fashioned, but Katie didn't know much about fashion, even though she now had the opportunity to dress well. She thought the dress was very pretty, and the pearl earrings she had chosen for the day were nice too. Before leaving them alone, the waiter lit a candle on the table. Harry had ordered it himself. He knew that Kathy was not a connoisseur of fine cuisine, and the names of the dishes would not tell her anything. But he decided to treat his Cinderella. "You're probably wondering why I didn't get you anything," Katie said, sipping her wine and looking at Harry with loving eyes. "I have everything in the world, and I don't want you to cut yourself any slack." "Well, not everything in the world. I wanted to tell you." She paused for a few seconds, and then he recognized her news. There was silence, and the longer it dragged on, the more Katie thought something was going wrong. Different than she had imagined. "Katie," Harry began softly. "What?" She responded with just her lips. "I want you not to think I'm a sneak right now. Think. Let's take this easy. You and I will go. You'll be seen. I'll pay for everything, and the problem will be solved." He didn't say that dreaded word. He wanted to throw words at him, assurances that it wouldn't hurt, comfortable, safe, that everything would soon be forgotten. "Okay," he asked with a soft smile, stroking her hand. "Good." She couldn't hear her voice. "You do realize you need to finish your studies. And I don't mean to never have needed babies. Of course it's my fault. I realize. I don't deny it. You're too young and inexperienced. So let me atone for it. I promise you won't experience any suffering. Less than a dentist's office, really." "Katie." "Okay," she repeated. A quarter of an hour later, she said she was going to the bathroom. Near the front door, she turned sharply, ran out of the restaurant, stopped the first car she could find, and gave her aunt's address. When she showed up at her relative's house, frozen, tooth on tooth, with eyes like she just buried her closest loved one, her aunt froze. "Please," said Kathy, "please pour me your lemon liqueur if you don't have vodka. I'm going to drop out of university," Katie told her friend. She and Catherine were sitting in the conservatory. On the glassed-in loggia, Catarina grew all sorts of things. It was warm and had 2 cozy chairs. Here Catherine liked to work, sitting under a roof of green leaves. "What do you mean you're leaving?" Catherine asked, and in her voice Kathy heard a metal that she had never felt before. "But I won't be able to see him every day." Kathy sobbed. "I have to go. He's not going to leave such a lucrative job. He's the king and god of the university. The students look up to him." "Exactly," Catherine said adamantly. "He won't be lost, and you have nothing behind you. If you drop out of school, you'll have to go back home. There you have no universities. You'll be left without a full education. I won't have time to study anyway. Where am I going with the baby?" "Let me, but in the dormitory. The second floor is for families. They'll give you a room." "Do you know how they live there? Our dorm's in the private sector, and there's no mains. Only boiling water comes out of the taps. Can you imagine? Somebody has no hot water, but the dorm has no cold water. Girls are washing diapers, and my hands are red like goose paws. And I have to go to university, and everyone knows everything in whispers. And I hear that whispering behind my back all the time. And I don't think Harry's gonna let me compromise him like that. If I don't have an abortion, he'll just kick me out of the university." Catherine sat in silence, thinking about something. "I want to talk to him," she finally said. "You?" Katie's eyes widened. "God, what about?" Are you going to threaten that your father will ruin Igor's career if he doesn't marry me? Please don't. I wouldn't marry him now, even if he asked me. After he sent me away, I'll leave my dad out of it. He's out of this world. Catherine grinned a little and seemed very mature. He'll buy all the equipment he needs for the laughs, but he'll forget about the fact that there's no cold water in the dormitory. Can you believe it, Kathy? He eats pumpkin. What? He loves pumpkin porridge more than anything in the world, and he wants his mom to make it every day. He doesn't need anything fancy, and his favorite shirt is in its third decade. He's used to it. He doesn't need anything else. It's ridiculous to let Daddy have any say in his life. Don't be afraid, Katie. I'm not going to bully your Harry. I'm not going to ask him for anything. I'll just tell him my story. What story? You haven't told it to me. No. I gave my mom my word that no one would ever find out. And you know I usually keep my word. But now, give me your Harry's cell phone number, please. Maria, Catherine's mother, came from a remote Siberian village. It was a very quiet corner with a single store and a bus to the district center twice a week. Young people invariably left here after finishing school. It was good that Maria's family had many children. Brothers and sisters made up for the lack of friends. There was someone to play with, to wander in the woods. Maria's parents sadly realized that their chicks would fly out of the nest, although they themselves were not going to move to the city, and hoped that at least one of their children would stay to brighten their old age. Maria was 16 years old when Anthony came to the village. A new man in the neighborhood, but Anthony would have attracted attention in any society. He was a little over 30 then, and until recently, he had been working as a geologist. But then something hit him in the head, as Maria's mother delicately put it, and he wished to live in the arms of nature. To hunt, to plant a vegetable garden, to eat what he grew and extracted, to drink key water, to be surrounded by forest, birds, animals, and no people. He came to the village to find such a place in the vicinity and settle there. He seemed to be a healthy man. Maria's mother said he had a lot of work to do, but he was up to something. He was healthy, but his head was sick. Nevertheless, when Anthony paid people who knew the area well, they pointed him to a hunting hut far away in the woods. It had been abandoned in recent years, only occasionally occupied by those who went out with guns for trophies and were late in returning. Anthony came to like it. The place suited him perfectly. Absolute quiet, a small creek in the neighborhood. The cabin had a stove, and the essentials of a table, a few benches. "I'm ready to buy this house," he said. But they just laughed at him. "Who would sell this hut to you? Nobody lives there, it's nobody's. Settle in, no one will kick you out." Maria knew the place well. She and the boys used to play there, amused by the fact that they had their own house there. But it was always in summer, and they stayed in the hut well for a few hours, and in the evening they were expected home for dinner. But the girl could not imagine that it was possible to stay in this wilderness for the winter. The frosts here are so cold, and the snow falls above your head. If something happens, try to get to people. She couldn't imagine that her opinion would soon change. There were no boys her age or older in the village she could lay her eyes on. Anthony was the first to pay attention to her, and soon the girl fell in love with him without memory. At first it looked quite innocent. Maria helped Anthony to get used to the local area, showed him plants, taught him what was poisonous and what was edible, where it was better to pick mushrooms, where hunting was good, and where it was useless to wait for animals. She carried him milk and bread from home, bought needles, threads, and other small things at his request in the village store. And she herself did not notice how the time came when she could not live without Anthony. When Maria told her parents she was moving into the hut, they were stunned. Then the mother began to howl as if she were dead, and the father threatened to shoot his daughter's chosen one with a hunting rifle. But the girl felt so happy at that time that she only said, "You can't hold me anyway. I'll run away to him. If you let me go, I'll visit you. If not, let's say goodbye for good." Parents knew stubborn, unyielding character of Maria and realized she will still do her own way. The next day, the daughter packed her things in a backpack and left, humming, in her new life. How soon she regretted what she had done her parents did not know. Maria has always been secretive, shared only the good, and all the difficulties and sorrows experienced alone. The first time at the new place everything went well. Maybe if the girl had lived in the city before, she would immediately feel the change and be disappointed. But for Maria was accustomed to housework. She knew how to cook, sew, wash. in the uninhabited hut made cozy. Once a month, together with her unmarried husband, came to the village. She visited her parents and brought them forest gifts. Usually it was Siberian berries or fresh fish. Maria washed in the bath, listened to the simple village news, and the next day, together with Anthony, returned to her forest hut. And then winter came. That year it was particularly severe. It was impossible to go to the village because there was too much snow. And the young woman spent all her days in the small hunting hut. The stove had to be heated often, and the house would get cold in no time. And all the entertainment was a few books, read 100 times. Maria couldn't wait for the warmth, when the forest paths would dry up and she could visit her family. When she finally reached the village, she learned the bitter news. Her father had died at the beginning of winter, and her mother was ill. Maybe because she had lost the man she had lived with all her life, or maybe because she was worried about the fate of her youngest daughter. Either way, it was impossible to leave her without medical care, and the older children took her to their home in the city. The native house met Maria with boarded-up windows. That same year, Maria became pregnant. That was the first time she mentioned that she should probably move closer to people for the first time, return to the village, to register, so that help would be nearby if anything. And when the child was born, until he grew up a little, it was impossible to keep him in the wilderness. But Anthony dismissed all her plans. He began to assure Maria that she should rely on nature. Childbirth is a natural process and everything will be fine. And every city-pampered child will not grow so strong and healthy as their son here in the fresh air and healthy food. Some doubts arose in Maria's soul. She would feel more at ease if she could get to a doctor in case of need. But Anthony never tired of assuring her that she was a sturdy young girl and everything would go well. Maria only managed to take one promise from him. The baby must be born in a maternity hospital. My mom told me that she almost died once when my brother Austin was born. It's times like this you need doctors around. Anthony promised. However, when the time came, getting out of the backwoods was impossible. It was raining very hard, and there was no way to get through the forest paths. They should have gotten to the hospital beforehand, Maria worried. Anthony again assured her that everything would be just as it should be. And although the young woman had to suffer a lot, a strong, healthy boy was born. Maria tried to persuade her husband to contact the Big Earth. She would be calmer if the doctor examined the child and said that he was all right, but Anthony refused flatly. Now, in his opinion, the young mother just needed to recuperate. Anthony himself cooked food, fed Maria, was caring and gentle, and she for a while resigned herself to the state of affairs. Now, even in winter, Mary was no time to be bored. Wherever her husband went, she was not alone with her child. The mother was worried that the baby could catch cold. She often stoked the furnace, and still the hut was colder than it usually was in the winter months in Maria's home. But little Vanya did not fall ill. The trouble came in spring, when the sun had already warmed up, and the mother and child spent a lot of time in the fresh air. The baby crawled on a spread blanket. Maria sewed or knitted. No one noticed how Evan got a tick, but when the baby became worse, parents could not help him. The boy died of encephalitis. It was the hardest time of Maria's life. She hated herself for not insisting on her own way. It was necessary to move with her son at least for a while in the empty parental home. Anthony took his son's death much more calmly. That's how it worked in nature, he told his wife. Natural selection, only the strong survive. Encephalitis cures itself without medication. If Evan wasn't meant to be, that was his fate. A cemetery funeral was out of the question too, according to Anthony. You and I know how it happened, but strangers might not believe it, and they'll make it our fault anyway. They'll say we shouldn't have raised the child in the woods, that we killed him ourselves. And didn't they? Maria looked up with tears in her eyes. No one can forbid us to live as we think right, Anthony said firmly. We will still get better, you'll see. Maybe if Maria had a father and mother waiting for her, she would have packed up and gone to them. But close people already live far away from these places, and Anthony constantly insinuated to Maria that she had no one but him, that only he needed her. And the young woman agreed to stay. A year and a half later, by the time the baby girl was born, Maria was already hard to recognize. Very young, she looked almost twice her age. Her hands were calloused from hard work, her clothes were threadbare, and the cheerful, sly expression that had once characterized her had long since disappeared. She felt so unwell that when Anthony went to the village to buy some clothes and groceries, she only waved her hand. Go yourself, buy what you want. What if I don't guess the size? I don't care what you bring, I'll wear it. She's really become quite indifferent to her appearance, and maybe even her destiny. She no longer expected anything. Yesterday was like today, and so, monotonously, went month after month. Meanwhile, the second labor was easier, and the woman in labor rose to her feet more quickly. The baby was now in her arms. Anthony had hoped for a son the second time around, and when he became the father of a daughter, he declared that he would raise her as a boy. Maybe some higher power took pity on the girl or her mother. It is not known whether Maria would have been able to bear the loss of a second child or not. Anthony's assurances that nature does everything right, making natural selection, calmed her not too much. Little Catherine's childhood was not easy. No toys to amuse her peers, no special food choices, no cartoons. The simplest food that her father got and the simplest clothes that her mother sewed. Her mother also gave her a single doll, also handmade. Of course, childhood everywhere finds its joys, and Catherine enjoyed playing with animals, spend whole days in the forest, and learn the lessons that gave her father. By the time when children are preparing to go to school, Catherine could read, count to 100, and would be able to last a few days in the taiga, even if there were no adults. But in winter it was difficult, literally cold, hungry, and lonely. One could not go anywhere from home, especially in the frost. The older Catherine became, the more she understood, the more often she noticed that her mother was trying to change their lives, and all for her sake. Daughter needs to study, she told her father. Come on, he waved away. All that is really necessary, we teach her ourselves. But in these schools, there's nothing but vices. Their children learn one from another, and by the time they graduate, they drink, smoke, and cohabit with each other. I didn't drink or smoke, my mother objected. You're just lucky you didn't have time to spoil yourself. And Catherine will be led astray there. Sooner or later people will come here. The mother came in from the other end, and it will become known that the child sits at home, does not go to school. They'll take you Catarina away from us, terminate her parental rights. If you go back and forth to the village, that's what will happen. You'll complain about your life there. Write that your husband abuses you, keeps you in beastly conditions. Then you'll lose your daughter for sure. And if you don't bother people, no one will interfere in our lives. The gypsies live as they want. Nobody touches them. But we, Mom started, and we're hermits, her father interrupted her. It's our choice. Maybe it's your choice, not ours. Mom once dared to say, I wouldn't dream of cleaning pots with river sand and wearing a patched skirt. Don't you like it? Father stared at her, valley to your village, and I'll take Catherine and go with her to a place where you'll never find us, neither me nor her. Mom sniveled. Catherine realized that parting them from each other would be the hardest thing in the world. It is not known how and when their fate would have changed, but helped misfortune. Father began to take Catherine with him to hunt, and at an unfortunate hour they encountered a bear. If her mother had not rushed to look for them, Catherine would have died. That's when her leg was mangled. Catarina does not remember how her mother dragged her daughter to the village, to people. Her mother said that she was not carrying her in her arms. She made a drag her out of twigs and waded through the roadless terrain. Luckily, she didn't get lost. Only one thing Mom repeated to Catherine. Don't tell anyone about your father. Don't talk about your father. Mom, but he'll die there, he's all alone. Don't tell, Mother kept saying, and it seemed to her daughter that at these moments she was not in her right mind. Father is lying there alone, in the taiga wounded, and there is no help for him. Mother must have realized that if he stayed alive, he would never give them peace. So she chose such a cruel way to be free, since fate had given her such a lead. Catherine had nothing to worry about. She was in too much pain, too much blood loss. She was waiting for heavy treatment, several operations, but the doctor said that she would have to walk from now on, or with a crutch, or at best leaning on a stick. In the hospital, Catherine was looked at as a wonder, as some kind of female Mowgli, and for her everything around was so unfamiliar and alien, as if she was on another planet. But soon Catherine in the hospital loved her. She never complained, did not capricious, behaved unusually courageous and unobtrusive. Her mother told me afterwards that she had been dealt with. Catherine really could have been taken away from her. But Mom somehow managed to convey that together with her daughter became a victim of circumstances, that her husband did not let her and her daughter to people, or she would have long ago returned to her native home. And they were not separated. The mother admitted that her husband remained in the taiga. Her daughter she managed to get out, but her husband did not. But she said that she could not specify the exact place. Of course, a search was organized. Catherine understood her mother hoped that while they were looking for her father, he would die, and her mother would not be considered guilty because it was done by a bear, a tragic accident, nothing more. However, the search parties found neither the father nor his body, and for a long time it worried Mom terribly. Catarina was discharged, and she and her mother really settled in her mother's native house. Both after Tega Hut, such a life seemed luxurious. The house had 2 rooms and a kitchen, a bathhouse, and another kitchen, a summer one, a garden with apple and plum trees. The villagers took pity on Maria and Catarina. They helped to install gas, shared their belongings, and at first they carried food. Then Maria found a job in the village and opened something like a small canteen, and Catarina began to study. She did not go to school, but a teacher went to her and studied with her individually. She said that Catherine was not far behind her peers, and with such a sharp mind as hers, of course, quickly catch up with them. Maria worried that sooner or later Anthony would show up. She thought he was capable of anything. The worst thing for her was if he took her daughter away with him, and she, the mother, would not have time to call for help and would lose the girl forever. And then archaeologists came to the village. There was a nearby lake, about which legends were made as if at the bottom of it lies a flooded city and amazing riches. Of course, at all times there were hunters, and dived, tried to find something, but nothing found. But Archie, who led the expedition, immediately said that he was not going to look for anything underwater. All these are just beautiful fairy tales that have been passed down from generation to generation. But the satellite map is a different matter. It shows that not far from here, in the area of the swamp, there are the remains of an ancient settlement. That's where it is necessary to excavate. Archaeologists brought food with them, but when they had the opportunity, they ate not food cooked on the fire. They went to the canteen. Archie must have been told about Maria, about her unusual fate. And he noticed the young woman. He began to ask her about life in the taiga. And there, both he and Maria did not notice how attached to each other. Archie knew that Maria was afraid for the child, but she had nowhere to go, her family was cut off. So he offered the woman to go to the city with him. At first, she refused flatly. "Do you need someone like me? I'll be your fool for the rest of my life. What have I learned in life? I've got nothing, and I've got nothing. I've been pulling Katia from one paycheck to the next. I only have a daughter, and this is someone else's child for you. How can you love her? Listen to me, Maria." The scientist said. "Fool, you say? So you and I will be a couple. I'm often called blessed too. If I go to work, I forget to lock the door at home. If I mix up salt and sugar, I can't eat lunch. Even shoes. Thinking, sometimes put on the wrong foot, then wondered why I was so uncomfortable to go. So it is I do not know whether such an absurd husband will suit you or not. And as for Catherine, well, where will you treat the girl here? She needs neurosurgery. I can show her some very good doctors. Maybe they can help her. Catherine will learn, get a good education, and never return to the taiga." Perhaps it was with this talk that Archie broke Maria's resistance. She realized that she would have to fully trust this man, and moreover, entrust him with the life of the child. But he would take her away from here, and she would never have to fear for Catherine again. She herself did not know why, but next to this absent-minded scientist, she was surprisingly calm. However, when her mother told Catherine that soon they will leave here, the girl experienced real grief. She made friends with the neighboring family, and the older boy, Austin, became her loyal friend. At 10 years old, you can fall in love, you know. You can fall in love. Catherine, however, did not yet realize that she was in love, but to go to a distant land and never see Austin again, it seemed to her worse than death. "You'll write letters to each other," persuaded her mother, who, as always, understood everything. Archie signed Maria as soon as they got to town, and he put the matter in such a way that Catherine was considered his own daughter. They say that for several years he visited her mother, and now here, finally married. Catherine was treated in good sanatoriums. Taken abroad. A long time ago, no one could not think that once this girl was considered Mobley. In addition, Catherine grew up to be very beautiful. If it were not for the leg, which has not fully recovered, some important nerve endings were damaged, there would have been a beauty contest. If Catherine had wanted to, of course, and it would never have occurred to her. She still wrote letters to Austin, who had graduated from forestry school and was now in the army. and she didn't tell her family the details of that correspondence. Mom, of course, thought it was the remnants of a childhood friendship that had dragged on for years. Well, let her think so. And also Catherine not often, but dreamed of his father, and they were terrible dreams. She saw him in the woods, lying in the snow dying. Then it seemed to her that he came and knocked on the window, wants to take her with him. She was awakened by that knocking. Of course, Catherine, when treated in the sanatorium, made their girlfriends, but all these relationships ended when it was time to separate. But to Katie, she'd, without noticing it, attached. Sometimes it seemed to her that when she was a child, she and Katie had lived in the same village and had been firm friends. Only then they had forgotten about it. And now what had happened to her friend, Catherine took to heart. She cannot allow Harry to break Kathy's life, and that's it. And in the fact that everything would go wrong for the girl, Catherine had no doubt. Kathy was broken. Catherine did not allow herself to break down like this, even in the most difficult moments. Catherine had heard about Harry from her father. She had called her stepfather Daddy for a long time. And surprisingly, absent-minded, out-of-this-world Archie often felt sorry for his imposing, confident friend. Harry should have had a different fate. Better, his father often said, his parents forced him into a career and he accepted it. It's hard when a man gives up what he's called to do. Catherine had not seen Harry herself, and if it hadn't been for Katie, would have had no interest in the man. Now that she had the slip of paper with his phone number in her hand, she sat for a while, wondering, what would she talk to him about? It would be ridiculous to convince him that Kathy was a decent girl and he should marry her. It'd be child's play, and nothing good will ever come out of a marriage like that, and Katie won't agree to it. Catherine got up, walked with difficulty to the window, and stood for a while, staring thoughtlessly out into the courtyard. Then she returned to her favorite chair and picked up the phone. Harry, her voice didn't sound like her usual voice. It sounded even more commanding. It's Catherine. Do you remember? Archie's daughter. Yes, the Chancellor's daughter. Thank you. It's a pleasure. I'd like to come and see you. Yes, home. You heard right. I'm not exactly easy to walk. And yet, no, not you to me, but I to you. I know the address, please. Give me a convenient time for you. Catherine felt a slight confusion of the interlocutor, but she was not going to make it easy for him and immediately revealed the cards. Having made an appointment, she ended the conversation, and Harry was really excited. Katie hadn't come to see him in days. He was no longer lecturing on her course, and they had not been able to meet in the classroom. On the contrary, at the university she had resolutely avoided him. She was always in company. He could not approach her. He was uneasy at heart. There was no telling what a girl could do. Really, she should have agreed to his proposal. Soon she would forget all about it. They could keep the same relationship, at least until she graduated from college. And there, Katie would probably find a suitable fiancé for herself. She couldn't help but realize that there was such a difference in age between them in everything, and he wasn't going to marry anyone. The second option would have been even better if Katie had disappeared from his life altogether. They'd both made a mistake, and they'd both try to fix it, erase it from their minds. Each would start living their own lives. Worst thing is if the girl goes off on her own. Out of pride, she'll go to some privateer. God forbid, there'll be something unfavorable. He'll be to blame. Or she'll decide to have that baby. She'll file for child support. Now, that's just not a good idea. So everyone knows he's got a son or daughter growing on the side. Katie will start blackmailing him with the baby. There'll be no end to her requests. Harry knew the rector had a daughter, and there was talk of her having some sort of health problem, but he couldn't even vaguely remember what the girl looked like. She didn't study at his department, and she was a part-time student. Why would she need him? Nothing occurred to him. Couldn't the rector have asked him through his daughter to write a letter of dismissal? Archie would never act that way. Maybe this girl had a boyfriend who failed the session, and she wanted to ask for him. What if she'd heard from the other students about his former habits, and what the girls were willing to pay for an A? He saw her on the intercom. A short, dark-haired girl leaning on a stick. "Catherine?" he asked. The girl nodded. He opened the entryway door. He met Catarina near the elevator. Such respect he had never given to any of the female students. But still, the rector's only daughter. Harry was used to being able to charm girls literally from the first words, and now, as they call it, he had turned on the charm. However, looking closer at Catherine, he began to get confused by the words. The girl was amazingly beautiful, truly a gift of nature. She did not need to draw a face, resort to the tricks of cosmetics, but behave Catherine at the same time as if she was the same age as Harry, grown man without any embarrassment. He felt her inner calmness. He invited her into the living room, offered tea or coffee. "Sit down," Catherine asked. And when he sank down next to her bathtub edge of the sofa, said offhandedly, "I want to talk to you about Katie." Oh, that's it. The last thing Harry had imagined was that Katie, clearly an outsider in the group, could have become friends with the rector's daughter. Was she really as cunning as he'd never suspected? "So what is it?" he asked, to give Catherine a chance to reveal her cards first. How much does she know? What does she want him to do, to get money or to get him to marry Kathy? "I take responsibility for this child," Catherine said. He didn't expect that, and such direct words, and that she would say exactly that. But damn it, how good she was. He, a sophisticated man, couldn't take his eyes off Catherine. "What do you mean?" Those words came hard to him. His thoughts were scattered. Harry tried to concentrate. "I'm going to make sure Katie's okay. I just ask one thing of you, don't interfere. You've already made it clear you won't marry her. And I talk her out of it, to be honest. It wouldn't have worked if you forced yourself to do it. She'd have spent her life trying to make you happy, and she'd have ruined her own. That's it, I'm serious now. Don't touch her again. I'll take care of everything." Catherine rose almost easily. Harry wanted to help her, to walk her to the door, but she made a dismissing gesture with her hand, saying, "I'll do without your help." And all he had to do was stand in the hallway and watch as the door slammed shut behind her. That same day, Catherine had a long talk with Katie. "Here's what we'll do," she said. "Now you'll move in with us. Don't mind? There's a spare room, and your parents won't say a word against it. The first thing we have to do is get you through university. You can't live with your aunt and ride a packed bus across town every day. Together we'll prepare for the spring session. My father and mother will be happy that I have a friend now. You'll go to your mom's for the vacations. Of course, she'll have to go through all this, but she'll accept it anyway. In the fall, you'll give birth and don't take a leave of absence for more than 6 months. By the winter session, you'll be back. Nothing will manage." Catherine was right. They really could overcome this obstacle together. But it was precisely because Kathy accepted her position that she was not alone. In the evenings, the two of them sat and talked about everything as the warm spring twilight descended on the land, drinking apple juice, making plans. It was here, in this house, that Katie found it easiest to study. Maybe it was the example of Catherine, who herself sat aloud at the textbooks. Katie went home after passing the session with honors. Of course, the first days were not easy for her. Her mother cried, and she herself cried. But to Katie's surprise, her mom was the first to pull herself together and began to prepare the baby's dowry. At the end of September, a baby girl, Tamara, was born, and Catherine became her godmother. Catherine knew that in a few months her friend would return, but she still missed her. True, these days she had to worry about her mom. Maria was facing a formidable diagnosis. She told me about it herself. "My Dr. Frederick's eyebrows are drawn together. I hate ultrasound machines. In the black and white of the screen, there's always something you didn't realize you had, like this one. Look, I don't like this one," says Frederick. "There's a tumor in the breast at 10 o'clock, and not all of its features are consistent with benign." He tries to explain everything clearly and kindly, as a doctor in a fee-for-service office should. He talks about fuzzy margins and blood flow. Later, he will leave the terms and exclaim, looking at my face, not professionally, but sincerely, "Don't bury yourself before your time." And he will add quietly, "On Monday you will come not here, but to the oncology center. It is necessary to take a puncture. It will be made urgently." I'm going out. I remember the lobby, the young receptionist writing out the bill, the women waiting in line, the warm evening outside the open door, the wind blowing in my face, but it was all unreal, as if through absorbent cotton, and my hand felt like it wasn't my own. I took my cell phone out of my bag. I couldn't call my mom or my sister. I could only call our family doctor, Gob. That was the only thing that wasn't even a rope right now, a lifeline. What if it's not over yet? Gob, as a musician, has an absolute ear for illness, and he wouldn't lie. My thoughts were jumbled. I paused to think of the words I needed to say. I put on operation. You? Me? Will, tell me. The truth? How serious is it? A friend of mine used to say when someone was seriously ill, when you're in trouble, you knock on every door. And other people think the same way. If I'm sick, I'm the one and only, and I'm not shy. And they start banging on the door. And God's door never closes, and he always stands on the threshold with his back turned to his own life, and sees and treats only those who knock. And now, as busy as Gob is, he doesn't say no. He's just leaving for surgery. But he'll call when it's finished, and call to see him. I still had to make it through the 2-hour commute home. An evening sitting with my phone on my lap, waiting for a call. The journey to the hospital, already in the late twilight. I realize it's shameful to be so afraid for myself. Children pass away from serious illnesses. Fate is ruthless to the unrepeatable. Anna, when she was lying in the ward in full consciousness and talking to her mother, the doctor came in and said, "How much medicine can you waste? She's already dying. It's time to take the needle out." What am I compared to them? But Catherine, my Katenka, what will happen to her because she is not yet on her feet in the truest sense of the word? 8 o'clock in the evening, 9, 10:30, call. "Come in, I'm still in surgery." He's finished surgery. I know the feeling. No wine makes you as drunk as fatigue. We sit there, two stunned men. He by the fatigue, me by the news. It doesn't look like it, Gob says after the inspection, and with those words I can get through the weekend. But on the day I have to go to oncology to find out the results of the puncture, I behave absolutely shamefully. I'm lying on the couch, drugged with sedatives and sorry brandy. I lie there in a daze, and every now and then I start sobbing. The puncture finds no cancer cells. There are 2 tumors. They need to be operated on, but the prognosis is good. After the stress I've been through, after a few days, I start to get pains I've never had before. My back and legs, all my joints, my fingers, and even my eyelids. The pills don't relieve this pain. I can't even sleep with my foot on the pillow. Oncology and patient. Dr. Walker. There's 2 of them, such experienced doctors. They walk down the corridor swiftly, keeping their heads down, seemingly not noticing anyone. But that's just the way it seems. They may not remember their names, but their cases are perfect. Here you are, pointing a finger at the woman standing by the dressing room. "What's your last name? Come with me, I want to see you." They're only affectionate with the seriously ill. "Strange," says Walker, having examined me, "I don't find it. 30 years I've been looking at women. I would have noticed a 2-centimeter tumor. What do you think? Go to our ultrasound technician. Let there be a third opinion. Otherwise, I'll cut for nothing. But in general, the final decision is mine." The sonographer finds tumors immediately and draws a black marker on the breast. Benignity is in question. They take me into surgery. I find out later that I'm a lucky girl. That people like me, after 3-4 months of waiting in line, being put in the hospital, every day come to the nurse's station and wait hopelessly. An hour, another hour. Finally, the nurse comes out. "Today, the doctors have no time for you. Dismissed." They get up and wander through the wards. Monday, Tuesday, they all have husbands and children at home. Wednesday. "You're lucky, the doctors have half an hour today." 2 quickly changed their clothes, took off their rings and earrings, and went to the elevator. And me? And you next time. The lucky ladies literally evaporate to appear at the elevator in a minute in full readiness. We are sitting in the anteroom of the operating room, 3 women in line, wrapped in white sheets, like patricians in a Roman bath. There's no Euro renovation here. There's tile falling off and plaster falling down. These are the most difficult minutes for the doctors. You're literally crucified on the operating table, arms out to the sides and strapped down. About the anesthesia, I decidedly don't care what it is. I can take it, as long as I get a diagnosis. Yes, it would be good to have a screen put on, not to see. Thank God. The nurse hangs a diaper on a special holder in front of my face. The minutes drag on endlessly. The lamps are turned off. No one's there, just the nurse. "Stand to my side, take your time." We wait another hour for the results. The tumors are benign. They let me go home. By 8 in the morning, I go to the oncology for dressings. There are 20 of us in line. And I, who still have a moral withdrawal, am amazed and delighted. "Shoulder hurts," complains a woman without one breast. "For this week, 200 cans of tomatoes twisted. Have you already bought underwear?" Asked another. And how could I? For 1,100, this is the third. Where did you get it? Greedily, the fourth. I bought it for 1,200. Show me. The woman looks back. Dr. Blossom is walking down the corridor. He's a young guy. Been there, done that. She pulls up her shirt. Here. That's a beautiful, beautiful bra, all lacy. I've got this. And I've got this. A hallway full of nudity. Dr. Blossom just shakes his head. Oh, come on. Dr. Walker doesn't even see me anymore. I'm a thing of the past. I don't take offense. He's got 10 rooms and a bed in the hallway. Thank him for everything. Why won't anyone believe me? God bass, I told you it was benign. And I'm not saying that I believe him so much that going to the operation touched the wall of his house as I would touch an icon in the temple, asking for help from above. I have known for a long time that God is with him. This is the story that happened to Catherine's mom, and happiness that everything turned out well. By New Year's Eve, Katie was back in class. Archie's help here proved invaluable. He helped the young mother get a part-time job at the university in one of the departments. With not much time left before graduation, Katie's mother said she would take care of the baby herself. Her daughter sent her the money she earned, and everything settled down. Kathy gave Harry complete freedom. She knew that if she went through the courts, it would be like stepping into dirty water, so she decided to avoid it. Much later, she found out that the professor had contacted her mom and was sending her money every month too. And she, as a practical woman, decided to accept that help. Only she didn't say anything to Katie, who was having a hard time as it was. And when my daughter graduates from university and gets a job, I'll just save the money that sends the father of the child for Naomi, thought the mother. Harry fell in love with Catherine. She even dreamed about her. He often thought about her. That's how you sometimes fall in love, against your own plans, calculations, and attitudes. But he realized that after all that had happened, Catherine would not give him a chance. And sending money for his daughter, he thought that if Catherine ever found out about it, he would not look like such a scoundrel in her eyes. Both friends graduated at the same time. At Catherine's house they had a feast, as the girl had said, for their own people only. Kathy was the most diligent in the kitchen, setting the table beautifully. Archie, Maria, if it weren't for you, thank you. She stood with a glass of champagne in her hand and tears in her eyes. That we, responded the rector, but I request to you. Anything. Always. Make sense of Catherine. She's a bright head. She's going to graduate school now, and then I'll take her to Germany for surgery. These were the plans. And what? Katie didn't understand. So she wants to go away, to where she was born. Austin's back, working there, waiting for her. You could sense that Maria was in deep anxiety. Mom, I'm not saying I'm leaving for good, Catherine said quietly, but we must see Austin, and together decide what to do next. Mother only bitterly waved her hand. Her old life seemed to her, if not hell, then some kind of purgatory from which she had escaped with great difficulty. And the fact that Catherine decided to return to those parts filled her soul with fear. But Catherine was joyful, as if she had waited for what she had dreamed of all her life. She insisted on her own, and a few days later her relatives put her on the train. A seat in the SV. Daddy, you're so funny, she tried to cheer up her parents. Maybe I'll go with you, for the 1,000th time, Mom suggested. No, the girl said firmly, I'll come, you'll see, and you'll send me to Germany by all means. Mother nodded, tried to smile, but she herself wiped her tears. Austin met Catherine at the station. They stood so long, embraced, that they did not notice how the passengers dispersed. And then they talked, interrupting each other, yet understanding each other half-heartedly. And our house? It's boarded up. I'm keeping an eye on it, don't worry. You can go in there tonight if you want to. Your mom? She's waiting. She's got your room ready, eyes on the table. Raspberry jam. You'll be picking raspberries soon enough, Austin laughed. They'll be ripe. It was all arranged between them, and that they would apply this week too. Neither of them wanted to wait any longer, and Catherine, who had lived in the city most of her life, realized that she belonged here, and that's why she'd chosen biology at university. There would be a job, at least as a school teacher, teaching kids to love the nature she loved so much. At Austin's house, the girl was as cheerful and talkative as she'd been in a long time. The puff pies were good, and the herbal tea was fragrant. They sat at the table until night, and then Catherine slept as soundly as she had not had in recent years. The air here is like that. Special. Intoxicating, she said. It was a few days after her arrival. The family was sitting down to dinner. Catherine brought a cup to her mouth and suddenly dropped it, the hot tea spilling over the table and into her lap. Austin's mother cried out. Austin looked anxiously into Catherine's face. "What's wrong? Are you feeling all right?" "There," Catherine said, pointing to the window and not taking her eyes off him. "Did you see it?" "What happened?" "The face. The man nestled against the glass. So ugly, so unfamiliar." "Oh my God!" Austin's mom believed her right away. And the young man ran outside to see who had frightened Catherine. It was already dark, and he didn't see anyone. Catherine was comforted. Costina's mother suggested that maybe it was the neighbor Alkash, who lives near them. Probably came to borrow money for a hangover, but saw a stranger and was shy. Catherine nodded, pretended to calm down, but for a long time could not sleep. She saw this pale face, in which she recognized familiar features. No, it could not be, of course. Probably her subconscious mind had recalled the past, the appearance of her father. It was just a dream. And then the bright, sunny days began. When Austin returned from work, he always took Catherine for a walk. It was as if she could walk more easily here. They got to the distant raspberry patch, where the berries were already starting to ripen, visited the forest stream, but to the hunting hut did not go. Catherine did not want to. It has long been in a bad state, stands without windows and doors. There is nothing to see there, agreed Austin. You know how it is, if anything unnecessary, whether it is an abandoned house or a barn, we immediately dismantle for firewood. And they started on the hut. But it's far away from here, it's inconvenient. So the walls were preserved. If I see this place, I'm afraid I'll start hallucinating. Catherine shook her head. You know, I now much more the past began to remember. Scenes I've long forgotten. I don't know how my mom got me out of it. Austin put his arm around the girl. He was much taller. Catherine felt his strong arms, pressed against his chest, and she became calm. She really wanted Austin to tell her that the past was in the past, that she would never meet her father again, that he would protect her from all misfortunes. But Catherine did not ask to be reassured. For too long she had indoctrinated herself that she had to be strong. You cannot hang on the neck of others. And now she tried to keep herself in control. She had plenty of free time during the day. And if before, she'd been studying for exams, now she was only concerned with waiting for Austin. So she decided to go out without him to pass the time. She wanted to put her knowledge into practice and see the plants and animals she had studied at the university. Now Catherine knew the Latin names, life cycle, benefits and harms. Now more than ever she felt at home in the taiga. Austin was wary of the idea, but Catherine's voice was firm. You know my strength. I won't go longer than 2 or 3 hours. I need it to make me feel like a complete person, not an invalid who needs a companion. In the end, Austin relented. He only asked her to be sure to bring her hunting rifle. You haven't forgotten how to shoot, have you? In the summertime, I don't know what would have to happen for a predator to attack you around the village, and we haven't seen bears around here for a long time. But as they say, he picked up one of his rifles, old and light, and now Catherine always took it with her. That time, deciding to pick raspberries, she hung the gun on one of the branches, and with a can deepened into the thicket. Time flew by unnoticed. The can was almost full when someone grabbed Catherine by the arm. The grip was strong, hard not to break free. The girl looked and she was literally frozen to the spot. The same face she thought she'd seen in her nightmare. An overgrown bearded man. Father. Catherine, he said. And there was no doubt. And she couldn't say the word back. I'm coming for you, he said. It was what Mom was most afraid of, and she herself. Where are you from? Catherine whispered. She herself did not recognize her voice, so it became so thin, trembling. What, your mom thought that your mom killed me? But I've recovered. I live far away now. There's an abandoned hermitage. No one will find me. How do you know I'm? I just get out to see people from time to time. We can't do without it at all, so everything will work out. When I came to get salt and matches, they told me you were here. Your mom didn't want to live with me, so God be with her. I won't forgive her for leaving me helpless. You can't do that in the taiga, and I won't forgive her for separating us from you. No matter what you say, my blood is still in you. And for that I should be grateful to you too. Catherine pointed at her mangled leg. If not for Mom, I would have died there in the woods. What would you have said then? would you have brought up natural selection again? And if Mom had gone crazy too, everything would have been fine. It's just a matter of life. What's there? She didn't notice how fear was being replaced by sizzling rage, but her father didn't seem to be impressed by her anger. When you've lived a little longer, you'll realize there's no place for a soft heart. Life is cruel. You said it yourself. Remember that. Me? Here, not a place, and I don't want anything to do with you. You're being silly, Catherine. Come with me, you'll see how well we'll live together. We won't need anyone. Her father dragged her by the hand. Catherine was precisely transported to childhood, when she had to obey every whim of his father, when his will seemed irresistible. If she fell now, he would not drag her to his abandoned hermitage. But the fear she felt was paralyzing. He could beat her. He could let her go now, but tomorrow he'd come up with some trap again. He's smart and cunning. And strong. He could target Austin. So she'd have no reason to stay here. So she'd follow him out of desperation. But she had a chance. One single chance. The bidon, she said, I'll take it with me. I dropped it there in the raspberry patch. Her father even smiled. It seemed to Catherine through his thick beard. Wait here, I'll bring it, he said. Do not be afraid. I just physically cannot run away, said Catherine. He hid in the bushes and a couple of minutes later returned with a can, which Catherine dropped, and froze. The daughter stood with her foot on the stump, pointing the gun at him. Are you mad? He whispered. For everyone you have long been dead. The moment Catherine pulled the trigger, she herself for a few moments stopped her heart. They met her at the airport. The plane from Germany was about to land. Archie, Catarina's mom, and Katie with her daughter in her arms. Say hello to the godmother, Katie coaxed the baby. Hi, agreed Tamaraka. Maria was worried. I was exhausted. First the surgery, then the complications. I'd rather limp all my life than go through that. But Austin was there with her nonstop, and I think that was really supportive. And the operation was Catherine's decision, Archie assured his wife. What did you decide? Maria turned to Katie. Well, you should have heard Harry repent. He said it took him a while to realize he was an orphan without me. Without me and Naomi. So Katie shook the baby in her hand to make the girl more comfortable. We're going back, just like that. At this time, it became known that the plane they had all been waiting for was coming in to land. Still, they couldn't wait to see Catherine. Austin was walking behind her, carrying heavy bags, and Catherine kept looking for her family in the crowd. And when she saw them, she waved her hand with all her might. She walked so easily, as if it was not all in the past massive stick-heavy step. Little Tamara waved back at her and shouted.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.